Hey guys, it's your girl Ginger Fox here. I'm gonna be reading another creepypasta. This one called Twisted Teddy. Never heard this one either. Anything with teddy bears or dolls, I am out. If that happened to me in real life, I possibly shit myself. So let's get into it though, guys. Twisted Teddy. I suffer from schizophrenia. Before you jump to any conclusions about me, before that word, schizophrenia, flashes its stigma and makes you think of serial killers, mass shooters, and the like, let me dispel a few things. I am not Norman Bates. I am not Ted Bundy. As a matter of fact, most sufferers of this illness shy away from violence. I do not multiple personalities. This caveat identity disorder is a completely different condition than what I have. Most of the time, I'm just like you. I go to work, I watch television, I read books, listen to music, indulge my hobbies, and spend time with people I love. I just occasionally see and hear things that aren't really there. Well, to be fair, there is some people that suffers really bad with it, and some people don't. Everybody's different, you know. Some people have it bad, some people don't. When this happens, when I hallucinate or hear voices, I refer to these episodes as experiencing interference, because that is how it feels to me. They are interruptions in my everyday life. It's also a good way for me to signal to someone I trust, who knows about my condition, that I'm in the midst of an episode without having to use that word. I simply tell them, I'm sorry, there's some interference happening, and they understand. Not everyone is understanding. My father is one of those people. I was diagnosed at a very young age. I was only 6 when a child psychiatrist reluctantly wrote schizophrenia onto my diagnostic chart. It's not a diagnosis assigned lightly, especially especially to children. Sorry, most people with this illness don't begin displaying symptoms until the late teens or early 20s. I was 6. However, in a weird way, I consider this a blessing. I never had to experience the jarring phenomenon of living a normal life to suddenly having the carpet pulled beneath my feet. Better to be born blind and lose your sight later in life. I'd never known anything else. This also gave me a long time to come to terms with my illness and to learn to live with it. I take medication, and as long as I stay on them, most of my days are just as boring and mundane as everyone else's. Mild episodes will always happen, but the big ones, the ones ranging on a scale 8 or above, are few and far between. The most difficult thing about living with schizophrenia is not always being able to tell what is real from what is not. Sometimes it's very clear. If I see a purple elephant riding a tricycle through my living room, I can pretty much assume that it isn't real and not give me much thought. Not give it much thought, sorry. The ones that get to me are the more subtle ones. Answering a phone that wasn't ringing, responding to someone calling my name when there was no one, attempting to sit in a chair that's not really there. This sort of thing can be extremely embarrassing when that happens in public. So I tend to stay away from most people. I know I come across as creepy to some. Strange. It's like they know there is something off about me, but just can't pinpoint what it is. Another annoying thing about this illness are the delusions. I have been fortunate though. I haven't been plagued by delusions the way some schizophrenics are. I don't believe the government has planted a chip in my brain or that I have been abducted by aliens. I don't buy into conspiracy theories or anything like that. However, there is always that danger. I'm always afraid of going off the deep end that way, so I avoid anything that might trigger it. Sometimes all it takes for a simple idea to take root, a word, a phrase, it's not always purple elephants. Oftentimes it's something much worse. One thing I avoid above all else is religion. I don't mean that to sound disrespectful to anyone who is religious. A common delusion for schizophrenics to fall into is the belief that they are hearing the voice of God, or that their hallucinations are actually angels or demons trying to show them visions. I've even had well meaning people tell me that I'm not mentally ill at all, that I'm gifted. I can see into the spiritual realm, whereas others cannot. Of course, that's ridiculous. This is not a gift, yet I do fear someday believing it. Who wouldn't want to believe that they are special that way? I suppose that's why it's such a common thing, yet it's very dangerous thinking. As appealing as the notion of being chosen by God is, the reality that I have an illness. It isn't pretty, it isn't romantic, it just is. Besides that, I don't have such a great record with religion. My father, I mentioned him earlier, was a Southern Baptist preacher in the backwoods of Louisiana, where I grew up. He was a devoted Christian and held his family, myself included, to strict standards. We were examples for the community, and they took that position very seriously. In public, anyway. Behind closed doors, things were quite different. My father drank heavily and had a hellfire and brimstone temper. It went even beyond that, however. There was a meanness in him, a side the rest of the con- congregation never seen. He relieved in his position of power. He revealed in his position of power over his followers, and that bled heavily into our home life. It weren't his family. We weren't his family. We were his flock. You see the scar across the corner of my mouth? That was delivered with a stripe of barbed wire. Strip of barbed wire, I think. Strip of barbed wire? Barbed wire? I could show you my urns and my back as well, but I kept those covered. No matter the weather, I'm always in long sleeves. Having a schizophrenic son was not news my father took well. At first he didn't believe there was such a thing. He was convinced I was behaving this way for attention, claiming to see things that weren't real. Then it got more sinister. My father became seized with the idea that was in fact possessed. My hallucinations were satanic visions. I was hearing the voice of the devil. That's where I stopped being human in my father's eyes. I was no longer his son. I was a thing to be tormented wherever he saw fit. He derived a sick pleasure in not just the physical torture, the beatings, the burns, the chokings, the cuts, but the psychological torture as well. He stopped calling me by my name and instead used nicknames like Schizo or his personal favorite, Hellspawn. Oh my god, this guy, man, this guy. He enjoyed taking advantage of my fragile psychological state. He would say or do things he knew would trigger an episode, and then use that as further evidence that I was filled with the devil. One day, when I was about 7, he came home in a drunken stupor as usual, but this time he clutched something in his left hand as he staggered through the front door. At first I thought it was some sort of dead rodent, but when he brought it into the light it was clear. It was a teddy bear, torn in places, with matted fur and bald spots. And in his gravel, slurred voice, he tossed it at my face and said, "Here you go, Hellspawn. Pulled that out of the dumpster for you. Mind you watch it," and got a mind of his own. With that, he plopped on the sofa and passed out. Mind of his own. That's all it took. That simple phrase. A seed was planted. I regarded the haggard thing my father had thrown at me. It stank. I believed him when he said he pulled it from the garbage. My first inclination was to just throw it away. In a few hours, my father would probably not even remember giving it to me, and would never miss it. But what if he did? What if he got angry that I tossed it out? Hanging on to a smelly, rotten, stuffed animal seemed more appealing than whatever punishment my father may inflict on me. So I took it up to my room. This was most likely some sort of mind game. He wanted to see how long he could make me keep this thing, make me sleep with it, make me take it to school, make me eat meals with it. As his petty torments went, this seemed pretty mild, so I figured I could take it. It was just an old bear, after all. But those words kept seeping into my brain. a mind of its own. I began to regard the bear with suspicion. When I was 7, I didn't have the discernment skills to be able to tell when a delusion or an episode was about to overtake me. I'm much older now, and I've lived with this for years. I now have coping skills and strategies I can use to combat things like this. But back then, I did not. I stared into the beady plastic eyes of the bear, and I could feel it staring back at me. It has a mind of its own. I threw the bear across the room. It landed face down on the wooden floor. I decided then that I wasn't going to take it into the bed with me. I would just leave it there on the floor. I went to bed, and after what felt like hours of lying still with one eye fixed on the bear, I managed to fall asleep. I'm not sure how long I slept. It may have been a couple of hours or just a few minutes, but I was awakened by a strange wooden sound. I say wooden because it sounded like snapping twigs and creaking branches. When I opened my eyes, they were already pointed in the direction where the bear laid, still on the floor, but now it was changing. Its furry limbs twisted and lengthened in a jerking and unnatural way. What the fuck? That was the cracking noise I was hearing. Its arms and legs grew and jerked, lengthening and thinning like spider legs. Ew, no, no. Stop. Finally, it lifted its head from the floor. It was swollen to several times its original size and distended across from fluffy ears to fluffy ear. From fluffy ear to fluffy ear was a row of sharp teeth that dripped with drool. It opened its jaw and released a roar that shook the room. I felt its hot breath hit me in the face, and I bolted from the bed. I ran into the hall and headed for the stairs. Behind me, I could hear the sound of crackling wood as the thing lifted itself to its feet. No, dude, what? I turned to look, and it scrambled behind me, walking on spindly legs and using its spider-like arms to dig its claws into the opposite walls of the hallway to propel itself forward. What the hell? The house rattled with its growls. As I reached the stairs, I slipped on the top step and tumbled to the bottom floor. I twisted my ankle in the process and couldn't get back to my feet. I looked up the stairs and staggered its way. I looked up the stairs, and staggering its way down was this monstrosity, no longer a teddy bear, but a scarecrow-like thing with the skin of a teddy bear, stretched across its wooden skeleton. It opened its mouth again and spoke. It's lovely out in the woods today. Be safe and stay at home. For every bear that ever there was, for every bear that ever there was, will gather there for certain. Because today the teddy bears have their picnic. Excuse you? What? What? I screamed and closed my eyes, sliding myself back across the floor like a slug. I began reciting a nursery rhyme that sometimes brought me comfort when I was having an episode. I tried to remind myself that this wasn't real. As I was going up the stairs, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish. I wish he'd go away. As I was going up the stairs, I met a man. Who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish he'd go away. I whispered this to myself over and over. When I opened my eyes, I was in my mother's arms. She was shaking me and calling my name. I looked past her worried face and up towards the stairs. My father stood at the top with the bear in his hands. What's wrong with him now? He said. I'm not sure, she said. I think he had another night terror. Figures, my father said in that familiar, dismissive tone. This guy's so toxic. Gonna chain you to the bed, boy, if you don't cut the shit out. Bro, what? What kind of father is this? He threw the bear at me again and disappeared into the hallway. My mother carried me back up to bed. For the next few nights, this happened again and again. The bear would transform into the monster chasing me, and my mother would find me in various places of the house, hiding in closets or in cabinets, shaking and reciting nursery rhymes. After the 6th night, my mother begged my father to let her get rid of the bear. She offered to burn it, bury it, whatever it took. My father just smugly smiled and said, "You burn a gift a father gave his son? How ungrateful." Somehow my father was still more terrifying than anything my broken mind could invent. Even so, the constant disturbances during the night was wearing on him too. So he made good on his promise to restrain me to my bed. The seventh night he tied me down with ropes and sat the bear square in my chest. "Why?" "Sleep tight," he said as he closed my bedroom door. What kind of... This father, man. This guy. It wasn't long before I felt vibrations on my chest as a low growl began to rise from the bear. Slowly his mouth began to stretch across his face in a toothy, distended fashion. Immediately I closed my eyes and began to recite the rhyme. Over my own voice, though, I could hear that crackling sound. I was growing. It was growing again, transforming. I abandoned the run and instead began to scream. I called for my mother. I struggled and strained against the ropes until they began to cut into my wrists, and I felt blood trickle down my arm. I could hear voices in the hall. My mother first. "Let me go to him, please. He's having a nightmare." Then my father. "Stop babying him. He'll drive us all crazy as he is." "He's driving us all crazy as he is. You want a stop to it? I'll make it stop." What happened next is a blurry mix of hallucination and reality. To this day, I'm not quite sure what actually transpired. I remember my father bursting into my bedroom. I remember the door flinging open and crashing against the wall behind. I remember the crackling noise the bear made as it grew. I remember the bear's voice. Today the teddy bears have their picnic. There was a scream, but not my own this time. My eyes were clenched tightly shut, and I just kept repeating. As I was going upstairs, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish he'd go away. There were growls and roars, crashes, the sound of ripping flesh and screaming. Then silence. Oh, it killed his father, didn't it? Oh my goodness. Finally, my mother came in. She saw me tied to the bed and ran to me, frantically removing the ropes from my bloody wrists. My father was nowhere to be seen. The bear laid face down on the wooden floor, as I had the first night, when I had thrown it aside. After attending to my wounds and making sure I was all right, my mother asked me, "Where's your father?" I looked up at her and simply shook my head. That was nearly 30 years ago. The community assumed that my father must have wandered away in a drunken stupor and had some sort of accident. There was a search in the nearby woods, but nothing was ever found. I still have the teddy bear. Never since that night has it ever transformed again. It's just a bear, just an old, worn teddy with dead plastic eyes and balding fur. When I first saw it, it frightened me, but I was just a child then, and now I understand that it was all a delusion on by my illness. However, for reasons I can't quite describe, I have a certain respect for this old thing. Sometimes the scariest things in this world are just misunderstood. Sort of like me. After all of us have a mind of our own. Dude, that's horrifying. That father, though, I don't know. I mean, that father was kind of he was drunk and he was toxic to his son. I mean, karma kind of comes to you, I guess, eh? That's what the rhyme was, too. It kind of, like, said, like, "I don't want to see this man." Talking about his father, I guess. That was intense, though. That was pretty... I was picturing all that in my head while I was reading that. Like, holy shit, dude. I hope you guys enjoyed that story, though. As always, stay safe and take care. Bye-bye.